to see you. So, back to what we were talking about.
Perception of the Nazi symbol, it contains 12 ramifications or solar rays, Christian esotericism. It is called Black Sun, Schwarze Sonne, and it has a dark globe at the center or a black field circumference. Easy to identify. So, there really was a Germanic symbol. Sorry, actually, the early ones appear in Western Italic Peninsula as solar representations in women's jewelry from the late Bronze Age, circa 800 or before the Common Era. And it certainly continued to be an artistic style during the Iron Age of the Merovingian period, or the Migration period. But the Merovingian period, let's focus on that, between the 5th and the 8th century of the Common Era. Going further.
So again, as you can see here, right, like so the earliest that were ever found, right, are in the 8th and 7th centuries BCE, right? Where in the Italic Peninsula, and no, these would not necessarily be people that would later become known as. Oh, that's awesome! That's so great to see. I'm Great Ace. I mod for Critical Ace 3. Oh, that's awesome! And James, that's so wonderful to hear. And thank you for everybody that stayed. Again, I apologize. I just really, concerned about my puppy. I asked them to give me updates for like everything because again, she's so tiny. She's a little baby, and I love her, and she needs the surgery. So, but yeah. Anyway, so these would not be like the Romans, quote unquote, right? And in fact, the Romans again were only people from Latium, right? Yes, I love my little puppers. Yes, that's true. I have 3. Sometimes they show up on stream, sometimes, but not today, because I wanted to. Anyway, I don't want to go off too much on my on my little puppy, but that's why I apologize for being away. But so the Romans were only people that lived in Latium, right? That were actually, interestingly enough, they called themselves aborigine, or aboriginal, right? That's when the first term was ever used to describe people from Rome. They were the aboriginals, right? The most original, so to speak. And so anyway, that was again to describe that like other people that lived in Latium, right, which is now called Lazio in Italy, were again people that spoke what we now recognize as Latin, hence the name, right? Hello, Lexi. It's so good to see you. Thank you so much for making it to the stream today. Oh, it's going well. How about for you? I'm just got a wonderful raid by James from the internet. Again, ever thankful for that. Right now going over the history of this stuff too. Oh yeah, awesome. But you can see, and yes, if you'd like to help my research, you can always go to my throne. I currently have a book listed up here, Yiddish South of the Border, because what I focus on is history, but I'm particularly looking at Latin American history. So there's that. If you'd like to help in any way, you can always help that way. Yes, take notes. Yes, take notes. There will be a quiz at the end. No, I'm joking. But so as you can see, this one, which is yes. Okay. So as you can see, with the exception of the late Bronze Age in Italy, in Verrucchio, right? In Italy, what is now Italy, right? That was the only time when they had the center being filled. But it was not double fill. It didn't have a fill and then an extra layer, as the Schwarze Sonne, or Sonnenrad, as it's also called, is depicted. All of the ones that come from Germany, right, the ones that the Sonnenrad, the Schwarze Sonne, tries to claim its lineage to, and also, oh my gosh, oh hi Polly, hi, it's so good to see you. I just noticed, where are you? Oh, I'm right here, Polly. I'm here. Sorry, like I said, I was just very worried about my puppy because she's little, and I know I keep. Is it F? I don't. It shows for me that it's fine. Um, is anybody else experiencing F, or is it just FLF and FA?
North into Central Europe, and it's actually in Christian context that the more elaborate discs are found that come closer visually to the Nazi Black Sun. And these early iconographic representations in jewelry were reinterpreted and modified by Nazi period German occultism, giving rise to the Black Sun that we see here. If people really want to use a similar symbol but with pagan origins, then this is not the correct symbol, because this is a Nazi occult symbol created in 1934 by SS members of Heinrich Himmler, that was not only modified to look like this, but was also reinterpreted, therefore not having a magical religious pagan content, but rather interpreted and modified to fit Christian esotericism.
So again, people like to take the like with Heinrich Himmler and with all of the different, right, with the Okkultwissenschaften and all of that stuff that was occurring in Germany at the time. Again, particularly centered around Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, that somehow it was that it was very, very pagan, but it wasn't pagan, right? So once they reinterpreted it, and this is the thing where I find it very interesting, is like this is where knowing that Richard Wagner, right, was like the favorite composer of Hitler, and of course, there's reasons for that, because of course Richard Wagner wrote, I believe in 1968, Oder des Judentums in der Musik, right, on Jewishness in music, which again is anti-Semitic, right? It's an anti-Semitic text. Later, so I mean, apparently later on in his life, he wrote another text like repudiating it. That's what some people say, but I mean, still, like its effect. I mean, it was during a time of increased anti-Semitism, so it kind of was too late anyway. Even if he did recant it or anything later on, but anyway, that is where you get the last of the music dramas. So Richard Wagner did not believe that his stuff were operas, right? Like when he thought of opera, he thought of Rossi. When most people think of opera, they think of like Il Barbiere di Sevilla, Norma. Let's see, what are some other ones? Don Giovanni, or also Les Pêcheurs de Perles, right? And stuff like that, right? Especially because in the 19th century, Paris became the center of operatic culture, so that's why you have Meyerbeer, who was Jewish, and even though his name was Giacomo, Jacob Meyerbeer, you also had, of course, but at this point, right, Richard Wagner writes the 4 main music dramen, or Musikdramen, right, and this is where his ideas of the Gesamtkunstwerke comes in, right? So a Gesamtkunstwerke means a total work of art, right? And so what this meant was that he wanted to create a story that essentially retold the story of the world, as it were, leading to what essentially is Ragnarok, right? Like Die Götterdämmerung is Ragnarok, essentially. But you have the Einbunden wie Festspiel, right, of Das Rheingold, right? So you have the initial night where you watch the Rheingold, that's what it's called, right? Where it's the story of like how the Rheingold, it's like this whole hero arc, right? Like there's Siegfried, right, who's like the great figure of of heroism and Germanic honor, etc., etc. But then Ragnarok happens, right? Valhalla gets destroyed, gets set alight, and then the world floods, right? And then you have the new world appearing. But after these 4 music dramas, 4 music dramas, which he had at Bayreuth, which is in central Germany, in Bavaria. Then you have the final one, Parzival. Now, if you know Parzival, right, or in English, Percival, right, you know that is a reference to the Knights of the Round Table, right? Like that's a reference to like the Holy Grail, etc., etc. So this is where, this is actually the point where Nietzsche, technically Nietzsche sort of broke it off with Wagner when he first was watching Das Rheingold. But once he had Parsifal, which is a overtly Christian music drama, that's all about like redemption and all those things. This is where a lot of the esoteric ideas also come from, which, interestingly enough, as much as people like to connect the fact that Hitler's favorite composer was Wagner, hence why that people say that Wagner, the mercenary group in Russia, the original owner, not Prigozhin, but the previous owner, who was, I guess you could say, was a neo-Nazi, named it that for that reason, right? Because of anyway. But the point being that that you essentially have this connection that's already constructed, right? It's reconstructed. Like Richard Wagner, when he writes Der Ring des Nibelungen, or the Ring of the Nibelung, he does so by reading all of the Icelandic sagas, all these different things, and the Nibelungenlied, which is kind of like the founding epic of the Germanic speaking peoples, one could say, right? But he changed all of the stories, right, to fit, right, the narrative that he wants to show, right, which of course is embedded with anti-Semitism, etc., etc. So with Parzival, it's very different because it's overtly Christian, right? Whereas in Der Ring des Nibelungen, it's completely Christian, right? So many people try to obscure the fact that the esotericism that the Nazis, particularly with Heinrich Himmler, were doing was Christian esotericism, right? Not necessarily pagan, right? They might take symbols, but you can see that then they change it, kind of like Richard Wagner, right? Where you change it over from something that is pagan over to something that is Christian, like Parzival, right? So that's important to keep in mind.
Which is the basis of Nazi occultism. Mind you that we really don't know much concerning the discs as pieces of jewelry from the Migration period and the Merovingian period. The archaeological evidences aren't many, and there hasn't been a thorough work of investigation, not yet. So there's a lot of speculations concerning the meaning of such solar...
So this is another reason why I like to always speak with or give room to other academics, right, who are historians or archaeologists, is that like I'm more than happy to say, like, yeah, there's no study on this yet, right? Like no one's done this questioning, right? Like one day perhaps someone will do it, but right, like, in fact, if you want to help my own research, you can always go to my throne, right, and help me, because again, a lot of the stuff I'm doing is again never really been done before, which is kind of part of what academics do, but still, there's never been a formal, full-on investigation of the Migration period solar symbols that existed at this time. So, because one, the archaeological evidence, as Arith just mentioned, it's very scarce. Yeah, but if this guy doesn't know the local, it doesn't either. Right, exactly. But it's different. I mean, I guess it's different because he does know the context in which they were found, right? Like, there are no manuscripts, say, right, that say oh, when women wear this buckle, it's for fertility, right? But we do know that, like, again, as he was saying earlier, like the number 9 is associated with fertility, when you have the Odinic, right, numeration, and also the underworld and other stuff like that. So, if a woman wears it as a belt buckle, right, it could be seen as a fertility thing, right? Like these are speculations that sometimes archaeologists and historians can make based on their knowledge of other things, right? And until there is direct evidence proving that that is the case or not the case, then then you change the hype, then you change the conclusion, right? Because the whole point about history is it's constantly evolving. Like the people that view history as like, oh, here's this fact of this or that, that's not how that works, right? Like, I mean, there even is this idea that like facts have a half-life, so to speak, where they, like, every 7 years certain facts, right, are die out, so to speak, right? Like they something about them becomes rediscovered, right? Like especially with medical knowledge, like this is the reason why doctors and other people, right, like other academics, have to keep a lot of, like, historians for sure do, but it can become very ivory towerish for some if they become like tenured professors, right? And then they just stop caring. But there are, like, you are supposed to keep up with the latest research, and with archaeology that is especially the case, because if you're going to write a book and it doesn't take into account, yes, exactly, most fields have continuing education. I'm just speaking because I know people at a particular institution here in LA that, like, once they became full professor, they just stopped caring. But that was them, and they're just, it's just them. I'm just thinking of them. But yes, like, you have to stay up with the state of that's why state of the field papers. I always tell people, like, if people want to participate in some way in an academic discussion, one good way of doing that is by writing a state of the field paper, right? Like, those things are always needed in academic journals because it means that someone is going around reading all of the latest research, right? And then bringing it all together and showing how the field is, like, what directions the field is taking, right? And this is the same with history. I mean, like, when I say history, people have to, one thing I want people to understand is that history is a very vast thing, and if there are other historians in the chat, I mean, I'm sure you as well recognize that this is the case, right? That, like, history is not a one and done type of discipline, right? It's like, especially myself, because I happen to be very interdisciplinary. Obviously, I'm not going to go into specifics, but those are things that are true. So yes, Sashi, that is very true.
Motifs. No scientific hypothesis has been established yet. The likely scenario is that they were representations of the sun. No doubt pieces of jewelry, such as amulets and fibulas, and probably also brooches, used by people with high social status. Mostly women, but I would say probably also in relation to a warrior elite, and certainly in Christian context of the Merovingian dynasty used.
So exactly what I just described like 2 minutes ago is exactly what he just did. Like, we have all this other evidence, right? All this other historical stuff that we know. Therefore, we can at least assert, right? And this is a tentative assertion, of course. And that's why he recognizes that, like, no one's done a full study on the migration period ones, right? Is what they necessarily meant. But to say at the very least that they existed as some kind of ornament, right, as jewelry or etc., like, that is an assertion that most likely is true, right? And again, it would change with, so also funny how he called it Judeo-Christian, yet I don't think Jews depict a sun, and that could be true. Exactly, yeah, Jews don't do that. Like, I mean, also another thing too is, like, that's not really something. I mean, like, the only thing that comes to mind is the place, right, Bet Shemesh, right? But that's the only place that comes to mind, like, that's, like, specifically notes the sun, right?
by wealthy members of nobility and the clergy. As I said, the number of rays vary between 7, 8.
But that's like Japan, right? Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Like, the only thing I can think of that is like from the Tanakh, right? That's a place name, right? Thinking about the story of is it Shimshon? Anyway, I can't remember right now. Maybe I'm getting it wrong. But anyway, where he has to go to Bet, or like the border, or quote unquote, like the border town is Bet Shemesh, right? But that's like literally like a description of the fact that this town is to the east of the people that, like it's up in the Judean hills, right, as they were called back then. So it's the home of the sun, Beit Shemesh. In the same way how Japan, right, is supposed to mean like land of the rising sun, right? So it's like a very similar nomenclature is all I'm trying to connect. But yeah, like illustrations themselves are definitely not.
9 rays, very rarely 10. The most common number of rays is indeed 9. Therefore, the idea that it was connected to Odin. But we have no evidences for that. It's just that in Scandinavia and in Iceland, later on, the number 9 will come to be associated with Odin in the very late Iron Age and the Middle Ages. But the number 9 appears in several sources of Nordic medieval literature concerning.
So this is the point. Like, this is why I think it's very important for people to understand that the sources, right? Like, so this is where, like, archaeology and historians, like, where our work overlaps is that we work with text, right? Historians work with text. And one of those things is that, yes, the Nordic medieval literature concerning the chthonic entities, the idea of femininity, etc., fertility, would make sense then. The fact that it has, say, 9 rays and connected to that would also mean that women wearing it as a belt buckle, right, in one case, or somewhere else, would make sense in that context, because that's something that even like in modern cultures, right, like in cultures that are now, right, have similar things like that, right, medallions or something that's supposed to ensure fertility or to protect the baby, stuff like that.
Fertility chthonic entities, usually female or effeminate. So there's actually a pagan feminine fertility motif usually associated with the number 9, which would
you know what this makes me think of? It makes me think of, so does that mean that the other one would be 6? And then that's how we have 69? Like, that's how? I don't know.
Explain why the earliest ornamental discs were found in women's graves. But then again, the earliest findings are out of Germanic context. So it really is
And that's the important part. The first ones that are discovered, the earliest ones of these sun discs, are discovered in what is now Italy, right? In Verrucchio, right? So sort of in like north central Italy. So yeah, 69, yeah. So that means that for us to say, therefore, that there was this connection that Heinrich Himmler tried to make, particularly connecting it to, again, this Christian idea, Christian esotericism, is something that he's not showing it right now.
Only speculation.
But
perhaps
yeah, he does show it a
the
lot.
rays of the sun as a heavenly power or a source of.
But I think that's also because he's trying to be like, well, I don't know. I honestly don't know why he shows it so much.
Maybe they aren't even sun rays, but representations of thunder, and right there, it would be actually more fitting in a fertility religious context. But these are the ornamental discs I'm talking about of the.
So if they are supposed to be thunder strikes or lightning, that means more fertility. So does that mean Like I'm trying. It's interesting because like he's Iron Age. Yeah. Like I'm trying to think like wasn't that area related to Latine culture more or less? Yeah. Yes. Trying to absorb some context. Not sure what the topic is yet. Oh, it's just it's thinking if it's looking at how the Schwarze Sonne or the Black Sun, right, is often like sometimes people will get tattoos that they think are like Viking symbols, right? But one, Vikings weren't a people, right? Like it's actually was a it's a verb. It's like Vikingur, right? Like it's like something you do. It's like a profession, right? Um, and so people go Vikinging, right? Um, yeah, the Iron Age did suck, but I flinch a little every time you say the German name because I hear the Yiddish slur English-speaking Jews use. Uh, for oh yeah. No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. But yeah, yeah. So we're looking at how the huh? Oh, there is a Yiddish slur that is yeah, it's the slur itself is like I'm saying the German word, right? Because it's literally the but in Yiddish people will use the first part of that, the Schwarze Sonne, right? The yeah, I know Yiddish, of course. Um, Ich kann reden Yiddish. I mean, that's anyway. Point being that word Schwarze, which means black, right, in Yiddish, is a slur, right? It's used as a slur, right? Whereas in German, I mean, you know, like again, the misconceptions of history, yeah, and also the misappropriation, right? Like some people will get right, like Mjolnir, and they think that this is an ancient Viking thing, right? But actually, the Thor's hammer rose as a way to also to as a way of depicting or understanding the Christian cross, actually. So, like, like now we think of Mjolnir as something very Viking, right? But it wasn't, right? It was a way to. So like the people that are heathens right now, like modern day heathens, right? When they wear that, it's kind of, again, they don't often understand the historical context because they take everything on face value, right? Like, oh, it's a Viking thing because it's Mjolnir, right? Yiddish needs to be an official language. Well, I mean, I don't. Well, I agree that Yiddish should be given its should be protected, and should become an official language of wherever, it's spoken, for sure. Or rather, a protected language of wherever it's spoken. But whenever, whenever at last, Palestine is liberated, it would be interesting to see Yiddish, being protected in some way, especially since the Israelis were the ones that banned Yiddish when they first, took over that land. They made Yiddish illegal because they saw it as lesser than Hebrew and German. Interestingly enough.
Iron Age, not the black sun symbol of the Nazis, which is always represented with 12 rays. It is associated to esoteric Christian motifs and nothing to do with fertility pagan motifs or pagan solar motifs.
Hi, Digit.
And it is a Nazi symbol, whether you like it or not. So, the black sun.
Don't worry, Digit. We're talking about how this is a fake symbol created, by the Nazis, and how it's not an actual Viking thing. They'll stop apartheid when Israel is abolished. I mean, sure. I mean, I guess that's one way to put it. But I think, yes, like the people that say, if anyone tells you that they're a two-state solution person, that's just ignore them, because, I mean, that's literally impossible. Like, if you've ever seen, I mean, I've been to Jordan and to Syria, and even and so even seeing, even being like in the southern Damascus area, it's like knowing like the size of the land that it would be relegated to, that is. Oh yeah, I know. I just wanted to call it ill. Punk scene has many similar symbols, but entirely non-related to anything. Oh, it comes up. Oh yeah, I get that.
And symbol isn't a pagan symbol. It wasn't even called Black Sun, the Merovingian discs. It is a modification and reinterpretation of migration period.
I am living a dream of an old gripe. Yiddish is a great language. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's why the YIVO, so in Massachusetts, in Amherst, they have, well, I mean, hey, we have James, possibly, if he's still in here, from the internet. He knows all, I mean, he essentially knows everything about Massachusetts. So there they actually have a place where you can study Yiddish, and there are, they have programs, like, again, where they want people to continue, right, the Yiddishist project, right, in America. Like, for example, this is not currently in my house. It's in my mom's house in Mexico, but I had, and I actually bought these in Mexico too. They're really old, but they're Yiddish editions of Shakespeare, right? Like Romeo on Julia, right? Like I had those. It's so complicated though, with the different versions of Yiddish and a lot of yeah. No, I mean, yes, I understand that. But people like Isaac Bashevis Singer, other people that were important Yiddishists were doing that. And the one that they decided for college, it's typically the Hungarian dialect, which the one that I learned is more east than that, but which is why, like, sometimes like they will use the word dom, which means house, right? Whereas in some places you might hear them say more like the German Heim, which means home as well, right?
Ornamented discs as pieces of jewelry by Nazi occultism of the 1930s. Also, and obviously, it isn't a Viking symbol either, as...
And also another thing too is, I've mentioned this before, but right now I'm working on a book project, but I do plan on, like the Russian Doma, yeah, exactly. Again, because it's more, the dialect that I learned was from more Eastern, so closer, it was more in the Russian Empire. Like I have here these books here that once I'm done with this book project, and one other thing as well I have to do, I want to make a university course textbook for Ladino, which is the other Jewish language that I feel needs to be protected, and all of that. And yes, as the Stream Element says, if you'd like to help my research, you can always check out my throne. Currently trying to get this book right here, Yiddish, South of the Border.
These discs were never found in Scandinavia.
So, if you want to help with the Yiddish stuff,
they do not date to the late Iron Age of Scandinavia, but the migration period of continental European contexts, Merovingian context. And the earliest similar discs ever found so far are from the late Bronze Age in Western Italic context. Even geographically speaking, the Merovingian discs have been found in the territory where it is now modern France. At most, it is a Frankish symbol, probably derived from Bronze Age artistic styles of Western Italic Peninsula.
So again, he's an archaeologist, and so one of the things that he's trying to show is that, like, the people that try to, like, oh well, Germany used to mean this this larger kind of like Wurzelssprache, or no, pardon me, that wrong word. Like this kind of like Urheimat, right? Like the original homeland, right? That's the term I meant to say. Urheimat. That stretch from this to this part, right? They do that that's one thing that they have done to try to legitimize their usage of these. But as Arith rightly says, is that even where it was found in the Merovingian context, was found in so west a context that it's essentially like close to what is now, or what people would recognize as like Savoy, or Western Switzerland, right? It wasn't like where Frankfurt, or where like in a very Germanic, in Germania Magna, as the Romans would have called it, right? It was instead found in Francia, right, or France. So, and that is most likely because of the connection between Mediolanum, which was at one point the capital of the Roman Empire, because it literally Milan, right, in Latin, Mediolanum literally means the central place, right? And that's how it was viewed at that time, as the central place, because it's part of the Cisalpine. Oh my goodness gracious! What just happened? Oh my gosh! Thank you so much, Old Sick Back, for contributing to Yiddish South of the Border. Thank you so very much. I appreciate that. Oh my goodness! Thank you. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Wow, was not expecting that. I love this little emote. Chromatic Mage made it for me. Because, oh, here, let me actually show you. So, my mom is a very wonderful person. And one of the things that she made me, right, and as you can see, the blanket that covers the little cozy emote is this blanket here that my mom makes. Because my mom makes blankets and sells them. So she hand crochets and knits them, and then, she's been asking me, like, oh, if you know anybody that wants to get one. Because she's going to come to stay in America for a while, which I told her why. But anyway, but yeah, so she made this beautiful, and so that is the inspiration for that emote, is this actual blanket that my mom made me, because this is what she makes. She's made a lot of different things, so yeah. She also, but yeah, so if anybody wants a blanket, just let me know. There's a way to set it up so that way you don't get you don't have to give me your information and stuff. So anyways, but yeah, so that's why that emote has those colors, because essentially she made me the pan rainbow flag symbol.
Italy. I cannot stress enough that the black sun symbol is a creation by German occultists linked to Nazism, and it is the product of a political religious project focused on Christian esotericism and on 19th century romanticism and politics of a racial character without any scientific basis. The black sun symbol is based on the idea of the existences of two suns, the one we actually have and another one that is hidden, an occult sun, a black sun, which is the metaphorical sun of Revelation, which only...
Yeah, and also I'm about to change the video anyway, so yes. Hi, Ganja Fairy. Yeah, go right ahead. Ask any question. That's why I always put AMA, because, if you need to ask any question, I'm here to, like there actually used to be this rabbi, very famous, and he used to say, ask me a question, because I have so many answers. And I've always, thought of that as a kind of a good, it's a very interesting way of thinking about that. How different were the Germanic and Celtic cultures during that time? Almost all my knowledge comes from either Wikipedia or Total War. Well, first let me get the Schwarze Sonne off the Sonnenrad off of the screen, because I don't want people to, but anyway, because now that we're done talking about it, so when we talk about Germanic or Celtic, what we're talking about is the language that they spoke, right? So like the Vikings, right, the people that did Viking stuff, right, were never like just people from Scania, right, which is again southern Sweden, which is where the term Scandinavia originates from. It's the part like just across from where Copenhagen is, right? So anyway, they were very much intermixed, especially since Celtic cultures, that is, say Celtic-speaking peoples, had a heyday in Central Europe, right, going from Western Ukraine all the way to France, and then later on all the way into Spain, right, which is why you actually get two places that are named after a way of calling one of the people groups of the Celtic-speaking peoples, right? The Gaels, right, or Gals. I mean, it depends the pronunciation of the person, but it's usually Gaels, and that is Galicia, right? Galicia in northwestern Spain, which historically did have a Celtic language, and but it became thoroughly Latinized, or so now instead they have a Galician, which is a Lusophonic language. That's to say, Portuguese related. They sang Paris. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, back when it was the two Galicias. Yeah, exactly. That shows their span, right? That they went from way over here to way over there, but that was over different periods of time, right? And also different groups of them, right? Because again, and then you also have Gaul, right? Gallia, right? Which is where you get the name, Gaul for France, right? So that's why, like, when people say like Celtic, right? Like that's something that after a while becomes applicable to Brittany, Cornwall, Wales, which in Spanish is Gales. I mean, as you know, right? Like there's a reason why Wales is called Gales, right? So you see all the connections, like everywhere where there are the Gaels, so to speak, right? They have the lands named after them, right? Or that land named after them. So like in Spanish and in French, Gal, right? And then France, Gaul, right? But then you have Bretagne, Cornwall. I mean, again, that's the thing, is like when you're dealing with history / archaeology, a lot of it is like for example, like if I could just make a quick example really quickly, we know the dialects of whatever language that pre-existed, right? The Anglicization of what is now called England, right? By the accents themselves. Like when Scottish people say certain words in certain ways, we know that that's because the morphology, the pronunciation of whatever language was spoken before, like Scottish Gaelic, etc. That is how they learned how to speak English, with that intonation, right? And so that's why those different accents, right, are based in that way, right? Because it's based on the way in which people spoke whatever language, whether it was the Celtic language or whatever it might have been. And it's the same in Romance languages. Like that's why Parisian French is very different from, for example, when I speak French, I speak it with a southern, that is to say, from like Lyon, Marseille, like have a more Provençal accent, a dialect, because for me, all E's, right, or all is are is, right? I don't, the Parisians, because of the language that existed with Normandy and all of the other the Celtic tribes that live right there in like what is now Belgium and northern France, they would elongate, and you can see this physically, that the Parisians will say j'aimerais, right? J'aimerais, whereas people from the south say j'aimerais. It's always instead of a. right? And that's a linguistic, you know, aspect that is because of the difference of the peoples that lived in this part of France and that part of France, right? And so, I mean, and it's even stronger in other places, like in Russian. This is why the other day people, I asked someone if it was like a dialect. I was in a chess tournament yesterday, but the day before that I was watching a chess streamer, and I asked him if the miscommunication was because of a difference in pronunciation, but essentially they said no, right? Like they were like, no, it wasn't. And so I was like, well, that is also because once the Soviets, established themselves in their educational program, they chose the Moscow dialect to teach across Russia, right? Like that's why they standardize most, Russian education. But you still have this leftover of people who were white, on the white side, right, as opposed to the red Russians, right? That they still kept their little intonations from back in the day, which is where soft T's for them, they don't perceive them as soft T's, and that is like a TI, right? So instead of saying, and this is very prevalent in French, so when you say petit appétit, right, a person from St. Petersburg from before the revolution would say petit appétit, because to them that's the TI sound, again, that goes back to what our discussion about how, like, in Spain they're not lisping, it's just that's the sound in Castilian, it's the TH sound instead, right? So I had French teachers who were Haitian, Canadian, American, and Parisian, and then I went to Concordia University in Montreal. My accent is weird as fuck. I mean, but see, like, in a way, like, that's kind of interesting, because, like, when I learned French, I mostly am self-taught. Like, I never took French classes until I had to take a French, like, another language class in my undergrad, and I tested into it. I took the examination to show, like, what level of French I was, and so I was put in the literature classes. So I literally just took one semester of French classes and graduated with honors in French, even though I had never taken. And they were like, "Oh, why don't you do a French minor?" I'm like, "This is my last semester." So I couldn't do the minor because I just tested into the highest classes. Because again, I had self-taught myself, because I like to read. I'm not fluent though by any means, and what I knew is quite rusty. No, I mean, like, that's totally fine. Like I get that. Like for me, I always liked l'Université de Laval. I always thought it was very beautiful. In Quebec, they're very beautiful. Like the older universities are very beautiful, but that's because of they are these old almost like Oxford, like when people so let's see here. Do people want to continue talking about black people in Latin America, like Mexico in particular, with Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr., the city with more than 800 bookstores? Let's see here. Oh my gosh. Let's see here. What's this one? Oh. Or the train video. I mean, if people want to watch the train video, that's fine, but I mean, I think to me it would be rather, oh my gosh. Okay. What do we want to watch Charlie Kirk? I'm totally fine with watching Charlie Kirk and him saying that, like, low testosterone is what socialism wants, which is of course the truth. Of course. Gosh. Oh my gosh. Wait. Hold up. I don't know what level of because we already have Giga Chad. We already had Mega Chad. I think we already had a Terra Chad. I don't know what we're gonna have this dude be, but this is literally titled "Why I Eat Raw Sweet Potatoes." So we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna find out.
Now I'm going to eat this raw sweet potato because I always eat them raw. However, be sure to bite the ends off. They taste terrible.
I mean, isn't that like, well, you wouldn't, if you cooked it, then you wouldn't have to throw away the ends though. That's just wasteful. I don't know. Like, he's one of those, like, oh, you know, let me teach you how masculinity works, and it's always, you know, like, but why? I know, it's...
Delicious.
Also, why is he just standing in a forest, just eating it? Like...
That's great.
He just can't cook. Yeah,
Some
he
of
just
the main reasons why I love raw sweet potatoes.
Okay, yes, he cannot cook. 2, why is he in the middle of a forest shirtless? Like, you know what I mean? It's like these guys, like, they're always trying to do, like, find a reason to be shirtless, but like this is just like, okay. His abs are asymmetrical. He has a 7-pack. Well, I mean, that's yeah.
First and foremost, it's just convenient. Cooking potatoes in general just takes a long time, whether you're baking them.
What? That is not true. You can literally put them in the microwave. Oh my gosh. It takes too long. It takes too long. Oh my gosh.
Whether you're sauteing them, you have to clean them, you have to slice them up, then you have to wait.
Oh, the horror of having to cook food.
It usually takes other ingredients. And if I'm out here working, the last thing I want to do is have to spend 30 minutes
working. Seriously? Working? This is working. Okay.
away from my work in order to fuel my body with carbohydrates. What I'll usually do is I'll just pack a couple pre-washed sweet potatoes, most of which I've grown myself, and anytime.
My mom is microwaving sweet potatoes. Yeah, I know. Like you microwave them. You have to put on a shirt to cook. Fuck that, right? Right? Oh yeah, and then no spices. Like, yeah, like this thing. I mean, like sweet potato releases the stuff that makes it much, sweet through the cooking process, right? Like that's what breaks down. But this is like he just pulls them out of the ground and then just starts chonking on them, like, and it's, I don't know.
I feel like I need to pick me up. Boom, spend 5 minutes, crunch, crunch, crunch. Not only is it convenient, it's also developing my chewing strength. As you saw, I had to chew.
He's chewing. Bro, what do you have to put? Never mind. I probably shouldn't even word it that way. But what do you have to put in your mouth that you need to like chomp on? You know what I mean? Like, what is this? What is this jaw strength for? You know what I mean?
Each bite 30 to 50 times before I swallowed it. And what this does...
30 to... Isn't our low chewing strength like the reason why our brain is big? Look, like, us developing the ability to cook is, again, so long ago, is one of the reasons why, like, we are able to, Homo sapiens sapiens, is able to, for example, be away from, like, spaces for long periods of time, right? Whereas other animals have to stay really close to where they live or whatever, because they have to be constantly getting more and more food over and over. His TMJ struck... TMJ? We don't have... Wait, what's TMJ? I'm sorry, that's like... I think I'm misunderstanding that. His TMJ muscles are the strongest in his body. Who the fuck is he kidding? I mean... we don't have multiple. I know, like there's no like, what is the point of extra jaw strength? Oh, temporomandibular joint. Okay, thank you. Yeah, jaw muscles. Yeah, no. Like once I saw that, I was like, yes, I know for the strength that comes through here. But yeah, I have no idea. Thinking about someone wizard teeth, I guess. Thinking about someone trying to give his guy the Heimlich while he's choking on a raw sweet potato. Imagine. Está entrenando para comer castañas crudas. Imagínate.
Is it helps the body digest the food properly. Whereas if you were to just chew,
Cooking makes it easier for the body to digest the food properly, literally. Also, one thing that happened when we stopped eating raw food, like raw meat in particular, is that's why most human beings have a slight what's it called? Overbite with their top teeth. Because if we still ate raw meat, they would be they would be equal. So anyway, I can't even imagine comiendo castañas like como así pues así como un cereal así. Cis white head dudes would go to ridiculous length. Yes.
5 times per bite, 10 times per bite, even 20. You're not going to be breaking the food down to the point where your stomach has an easy time digesting it. This is incredibly important for your overall health, and with a food like a raw sweet potato,
they always make it about your health, where it's like, bro, you picked up a sweet potato from the ground. Yeah, like with milk, exactly, como con un cereal, ¿verdad? And you're just like, what's the point in that? One, it's covered in dirt. Okay, it's covered in dirt. No. Look at this not cooking man may have a point. I mean, look, I've bitten into a raw sweet potato before, and it didn't taste good to me, but
you cannot chew it 5 times and swallow it. If you did, you'd probably choke. Not only is it
Crystal Gym Daddies,
more convenient, you're going to develop the strength of your...
Do you guys want to watch the video where he goes after, where he literally is like, weed is like the worst thing to ever happen to humanity?
Chewing muscles, which are going to give you a more defined face. You are going to aid in your digestion by learning to chew your food.
Guys in my law school class literally haven't turned on their oven or stove. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry, but I just don't understand that. Like one thing is I was thinking during TwitchCon, right? Like, I don't know if Polly's still in chat, but I was thinking I wanted to make this vegan Mexican dish that I made back when I was full on vegan back in the day, so that Polly could try it because I think she would love it. Because I also know a lot of vegan places in Las Vegas. I know Las Vegas pretty well, so I was like, oh, but then I would have to stay at those extended stays and stuff like that. But it's to me, I would rather I don't know. Yeah, it's really good. It's a tlayuda, so it's a thin tortilla, right? And then I put black beans and then aguacate, so avocado, and then other stuff on it too. But it's all vegan. It's all vegan. So it's really, really good. Like you can crack it, and it kind of looks like a pizza. So almost. I want to make it because it's really good, but I have to.
More. And it's just nice to get back to your roots. A lot of the time when we
go back to your roots. What does that mean? Okay. Go back to your roots. Okay. Go back to your roots by eating something straight out of the ground. That's taking that idea a little bit. I know I want to set it up so that I can do a cooking stream, but then I have to do it with my phone. So that's the only issue. But if I do, then we would have to maybe I'll do it in Discord. Let me see if my Discord thing works still. All natural, no preservatives, no cooking out the vitamins, so much nonsense. I mean, yeah. So in my Rainbow Castle of my Discord, there I might put a poll or something for what I would make, because I mean, I would want it to be something good, because if I make something really simple, go back to oh my gosh. Uh, I mean, it's like, what's funny is that these are also people like like these type of dudes here, right? Shakespeare, stop pointing out whites have no roots. It's me. Oh my gosh. Yes, Shakespeare, the most deadest, most white guy ever to have ever existed. Yes, of course. No, but one thing for sure is that like this like these are like these type of dudes are always like they like Ted Kaczynski, right? But then like this dude is literally always posting YouTube shorts. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, literally every 5 minutes. Like, that's actually how I ended up finding him, because hello, Nabil, it's so good to see you. Yes, he's the stoic guy. Yes, exactly. And but he takes it a step further, right? Um, uh, uh, the, uh, the Kivit, is that like he legit. Yeah, I don't like him. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm watching it because I think it's hilarious to watch people do this like weird, like thing that people do, right, in this way. But like, because we used to watch Giga Chad, and there is a video of Giga Chad that we could watch, but like legitimately, like, they will like Ted Kaczynski, but yet they're terminally online, right? And that's like something I've always laughed at, is like the people that love Ted Kaczynski most, they're too neoliberal. I mean, they're too just right wing in general, right? I mean, like for them, they think. I mean, hence why they like Ted Kaczynski, right? Like, even if they're conservative, their ideas are neoliberal. I mean, definitely by saying like stoicism, right? They mean be okay with your exploitation. So sure. I'm so sorry, but I can't take Giga Chad seriously. He looks like a joke. Yeah. Now I want to do a video shirtless eating a taco in my backyard. Hey, look, like, okay, maybe not shirtless, but like, hey, if I ever have a carne asada, like, I'll make a video of that. Like.
Think about food. We're always processing it so heavily. We're thinking, oh, well, if I want to eat a sweet potato, I need to chop it up nicely, and then I need to lay it in oil, and then I need to, stir in all of these seasonings, and I need to cook it.
He's against seasonings. Oh, no, bro, no. Seasonings are natural. Like, why is it that these dudes always take it out on spices, when spices are literally natural, like rosemary grows in bushes, right? Like all of that stuff, right? Like pepper is like they all come from plants, and they're like that's like industrial processing. Like, no, it's not. And what he's calling processing is chopping up a thing. Just let him eat raw for 40 years. He will win. Hi, Old Snake Twitch. It's good to see you. Sorry, my word choice is not good. No worries. I'm quite curious, to be fair. YouTube shorts seem to be right-leaning. When I see Pagan in the title. Oh, you just... well, we were just talking about, like, Nazi appropriation of actual pagan symbols, right? Including one, like, them trying to connect it to, like, their weird esotericism of the 1930s and 40s, and how, like, it had no basis in historical fact. Like, no, I have no problem him eating the sweet potatoes. I'm just like, when they are trying to use these ideas, right, to then go further and say, is there non-Nazi LARPing paganism. Yeah, there are people that are heathens, right? That actually try to revive. In fact, I believe an old temple that had been dismantled in like 1200 was rebuilt in Iceland. But there are many people who say like you cannot return. Yeah, neo-paganism, exactly. But you know, the issue is that some people claim that it's too difficult for like you essentially, and also philosophers will also get into this and other stuff. Is like now that you already had Christianization, that you already had the you know this point of removal of all of that and this whole period of belief that erased all of the connections you would have had to, you know, historically to the pagan system, right? You trying to revive it is, you know, essentially like a kind of LARPing, right? Like that's kind of how a lot of philosophers view that, especially when it comes to something like Greek paganism or like something that's been especially, right, like taken out of you know, like for example, like Greece has a national church, right? So like being pagan is you can be pagan, but the official church of Greece is the Greek Orthodox Church, right? So that's the problem, is like when does it start to become actual belief? And then there's an issue of Europeans viewing things as religion, right? Like Judaism is not a religion, Hinduism is not a religion, right? Like, but they are in the Western sense because they're made to be understood that way, right? Does that make sense? So then there's also the idea that like this paganism, right? Because pagan comes from païen, which means like if people know like the Spanish like paisano, right? Or stuff like that's literally what it means. It means like someone from the country, right? I mean, and heathen means someone from the heath, right? Like a citizen is someone from the city. A heathen is someone from outside of the city, right? That they live on the heath. So yes, yeah, Christian supremacy of framing of religion, exactly. Like because the idea of religion, even in Roman times, was because religio means to swear an oath, right? Like ego religio, right? Or, you know, ego religio ad deus Jupiterius, you know, like, you know, I don't know, like I'm just making it go as I go along. But the point is that because they would be swearing an oath, that's how that also informed I mean, that's the reason why one word that still sticks with sort of discussing other religions, right, is the idea of a confession, right? What is your confession, right? Interconfessional discussion, right? You know, other things like that, right? Like other words that make sense in the context of how Christianity became the imperial religion, but don't make sense in the context of every religion that wasn't one, right? For example, Christian is a secular holiday for some reason in the U.S., but to Jewish people that's not secular. Right. Like it's seen as secular, right? But it's literally, but again, that's because secularism, right, is already a concept that is couched in Christianity, right? Like the default, quote unquote, that secularism is based upon is the idea of the neutral, and in many cases Protestant subject, right? Yes, is the Christian frame, yeah. And in fact, who is it? Is it Charles Taylor that wrote the book The Secular Age? Like that he also goes into that too. How like even secularism as we know it, right? Like it's still based on the idea of confessionalism, right? And that's also how people will view other religions, like, or you know, viewing them as religions. Whereas like in Hebrew, I've explained this before, Yahudut means like being Judean, right, or being Jewish, right? But Yehudi means Judean technically. Um, so it's described like what the Torah and all of that stuff, like the people that try to say like these are binding laws upon all the, like it's actually more complicated than that, which is one reason why people ignore that complication, is the fact that it's meant to describe a specific society that was transitioning from a tribal society, right, to a class society. Right, like if you read the Tanakh, like the Torah and the Nach, right, the Nevi'im and Ketuvim, right, like you will see that by the end of it, if looking at it through a historical materialist perspective, right, you will see that it begins describing tribal society, right, where it is one of the many Canaanite tribes, and then it becomes through identifying with one God, right, and then ascribing all power to them, because Hashem in the Torah actually uses they them pronouns. Many other pronouns too, but they also use they them pronouns. That's when you begin to see class society, right? That's when you begin to have the priestly society, right? Similar to a caste society, but it was a bit different because there's only Kohanim, Levim, and Israel. Like there's only 3 things you can be. So, Quebec secularism means hijabs and kippas are banned from workplaces, and we have a giant cross on top of the whole city. Yes, exactly. And I remember too that Quebec argued that was a cultural thing, right? That they were arguing it's not a religious thing; it's a cultural thing. Because Quebecois culture is founded upon the history, because they will bring up this idea of la révolution tranquille and all of that stuff, right, that happened yes, it is just white supremacy, right, in Christian packaging, so to speak, which is why in the Assemblée Nationale, right, they because I remember because it's painted blue, right, so right behind where the Speaker of the House would be, or I guess technically le président, right, as they would say in French instead. They don't have a Speaker of the House as such, but le président, right? They would have a Roman Catholic crucifix, right, which are distinct, right? Like Protestant ones typically don't show Jesus on the cross. Orthodox ones, have extra parts, but this one was one that was like a Tridentine Mass, like a traditional Latin Mass type one, where it's made a specific way. It's kind of older, but the reviving part that is after the decimation of Christian after Theodosius, his decree, Chemistos Plenthon also did it at the end of the Byzantine era with the hymn to the gods and his No, I totally understand that there was revivals of this historically. Trust me, that's not the issue. The issue is that many people will say that once you have modernity, right, once you have full modernity as we know it now, right, or I guess now we are in post-modernity, but once you have modernity, and you have the secular age, right, as Charles Taylor writes, that people in Europe cannot go back to disbelief, right, this is where this is why the people that philosophers of perennialism, right, a lot of them wanted a fascist state, for example, right, because they wanted to essentially force these ideas upon people, right, and they wanted to bring out, and they liked the projects of taking pagan historical imagery and readopting it, reappropriating it into, again, fascist architecture, right? If you go to, so most of Berlin that was especially like the Reichskanzlei, right? That was destroyed after World War II completely. But if you go to Rome, the fascist city that they built there, EUR, is still there, right? It's still it has all the buildings Mussolini had built, right? And you see the usage of the motifs and the forms, right, of Rome, right, and the monumental architecture, right, that's and all of that stuff. In fact, I remember when I was in Milan, visiting, that like the fascist, like the main fascist building right there, like it's still there, and it was built specifically across from the ducal palace, because they wanted it to be like, you have the medieval, right, late medieval, Il Duomo di Milano, right, the main cathedral, which is like the highest, seen as the highest expression of the highest Gothic before, you know, the Gothic period ends of architecture. And then you have the ducal age, and now you have the new age, right, like the fascist age. But if you go to south of Rome to EUR, you see this whole area that's still, I mean, it's very interesting why they kept it, because, you know, you would think, oh, fascist stuff, they would want to get rid of it, but their excuse was they wanted Rome to host the Olympics. So they needed to use it because Rome was going to host the Olympics. So that's what they did. And they held it there at EUR in the fascist buildings. So, you know, so there's that. But anyway, a lot of the philosophers or thinkers and writers that aligned with this, right, were people like René Guénon, right, Evola, right, who were mainly perennialists, although, you know, you do have Giulio Evola, right, and you know, René Guénon, other people as well, but those are like the two main ones, right? But also, you also have people like Oswald Spengler and even Daré. I mean, without Daré, right, without the new nobility of blood and soil, I mean, literally, I mean, even to this day, I mean, the book itself, I mean, even the title of the book itself is still in Nazi thought to this day because of Daré. You know, you have all of this stuff, right, that you can look at. But one of the things that they always did was that they believed in this, that capitalism, like the reason why they were anti-capitalist or whatever it might be, was because they saw it as like that whole thesis of like the demystification of the world, right? That's what modernity had done. So therefore you had to remove the elements of modernity, right, quote unquote. That's why Julius Evola, like, when he writes the book Fascism Viewed from the Right, he says the problem with like fascism, right, in Germany and in Italy, is that it's too progressive for him, right? Like, he wants the return to the roots and blah blah blah, all that stuff, right? But of course, the idea is that would involve the re-invocation, right? Which is something that right-wingers to this day, right, like these types of dudes, right, like right here, and like MegaChat, right, that's what they're all about. They're like, in fact, there's one horrible one of these that like wrote this awful book that's sold on Amazon still, even though it literally has like legit like anti-Semitism in it, but and Holocaust now. But anyway, whole different story. But he talks about how animals exist in a state of constant religious inspiration, right, or whatever, and essentially saying that like humans used to be this way, right? So essentially taking like Evola and Guénon at face value, right? Yeah, sounds like bad pasta. Yeah, Mussolini. Yeah, interesting, very interesting. But GigaChad should go. No, yeah, of course. I mean, like, the person we call GigaChad here, right, who is the person who is this emote, he is a person that's like, he's like in college, right, like young, and he's like still in the like very early stages of this. Like, he could not go down this route, but because he's studying history, and he claims that his family invented like everything in Italy, but he thinks that the perfect time was the 18th century in England, which I'm like, how can you be a traditionalist Catholic and yet also want to be an English aristocrat in the 18th century? Like, there's a contradiction there. right? I mean, I hope I'm not the only one that sees that contradiction, right? So you think it's cyclical, and you build out new culture aside from the ashes through cultural fusion or more. Yeah, I don't think Spengler meant it that way. But yes, yeah, exactly. Because like especially Nietzsche's sister, right? Nietzsche's sister is the one that turned Nietzsche into the I mean, don't get me wrong, Nietzsche has his problems. Like if you ever read Human All Too Human, as soon as he starts talking about women and leftists, I you could be literally listening to, a debate bro, right? Like talking about the left, right? Same with Ted Kaczynski, oddly enough. Like when he starts talking about the left, he's talking about Democrats. Like it again shows that the outside of the liberal paradigm, right, which is the hegemonic paradigm, there is still a view that there is such a thing as a left within that paradigm, right? Whereas Marxism, right, exists without it, right? That is to say, outside of it, or rather, its thought is to go beyond it, right? But yes, Spengler. Well, I do know Spengler was misused in conjunction with René Guénon, because René Guénon is the one that likes him a lot, because of course he writes about like the Dämmerung des Abendlandes, right? Like the fall of the decline of the West, right? Which later inspires Rosenberg's book, The Myth of the 20th Century, right? Which is like volume 3 almost of that. René Guénon, he's famous for his masterpiece, right? Is called why am I forgetting it? Well, I mean, again, it's not like I've researched these people for articles and stuff, but oh gosh, well, one of his books that's like usually most known is The Crisis of the Modern World. That's one, and then the other one is oh gosh, what is it? Anyway, but it's a similar argument to the beginning of the first book, the first volume of Oswald Spengler, right? It's gonna bother me now. I have to look it up. I can't. It bothers me way too much. And then later, of course, he changed his name to Abd al-Wahid Yahya, right, when he converted to Islam, right? But yeah, and he also wrote on Abd al-Wahid Yahya and Sheikh Abd al-Wahid Yahya. He went under those names. The Reign of Quantity and the Sign of the Times. That's what he wrote. So the beginning of that, the Reign of Quantity, is literally the beginning of Oswald Spengler, right? Where he talks about like the idea of numbers and symbols and all of that. But yeah, I think the whole Kulturkritik tradition is interesting, and I kind of agree with some of the stuff they say, but my whole political orientation is not really mainstream. Well, what do you mean by like? Can you elaborate on that? Because yes, I want to understand what you mean by like your political orientation, etc. Because again, like considering this in context, Here, let me move it to chatting, so that way instead this light is too much. It's like. May I ask about Yukio Mishima? Yeah, yes, of course. That's another one that they also read a lot of, especially Sun and Steel, which is strange because Yukio was gay. I mean, you know what I mean? Like you can't deny that. You know, like they're like, oh, he was such a Chad, but it's like, but he was, anyway, you know. Anyway. I mean, he did try to overthrow the Japanese government, you know, which is, you know. Yu-Gi-Oh was gay. Yes, Yu-Gi-Oh was gay. Yes, of course. Because, like, actually, when he said it's time to do, you know, he actually meant dick instead of duel. Or by duel, he meant dick, I suppose. Or fuck, I don't know, who knows. Well, I'm a technocrat that adheres to utilitarianism. I do believe in bottom-up democracy, but only on the municipal level. So people vote and debate if they want to put a park. Well, So would that be so? Does that position come out of the reading of Friedrich Hayek? Because that sounds very Hayekian to me. I mean, obviously the whole municipal level is a little bit different, but the technocratic, you know, utilitarianism is I mean, that is, you know, in The Road to Serfdom and in other books as well. No, I never read Hayek. Oh, well, because Hayek believes in that only men of property over the age of 40 should vote in elections every 20 years. And only they can be, do that, right? And so it's a technocratic society, but it's but then by technocrat, do you mean it in the informed by like Milton Friedman, or like, can you give me more context on that? Because that's, I mean, it's interesting I've never like bottom up democracy at the municipal level. But municipal level in what sense? Like in the European sense, or in, because America's a completely, you know, like I would say, like, what do you mean by municipal, right? Like, because I mean, there are some people that say like, like everything beyond like state voting, right, is irrelevant for most people. I'm not saying that, but like there are some people that would argue like voting in federal elections is irrelevant, right? Like, if you just had this, I mean, this was an argument in the 90s, right? I have a realist interpretation of the world. I mean, again, if your scientists say it's the best strategy, then use. So it's a scientistic utilitarianism. So, what, like Herbert Spencer, right? Essentially. Again, I'm just trying to calculate, you know, or not calculate, but, you know, figure out what you mean. But realist interpretation, like realism is a position. So that's why I am wondering why. Because like Mearsheimer, the guy that never stops talking about Ukraine, right? He's a realism. He's a realist, right? Like a political realist, right? So I want to make sure I'm understanding your terms correctly. I think if you switch ideology, I am not well read yet since I am a first-year history student. Oh, okay, well, I mean, I only know him from his racial social Darwinism. Yes, of course. I mean, he's the one that coined survival of the fittest, right? Which is why when you said, if scientists say this is the best strategy, that's why it kind of rang very like that to me. You know, yeah, I mean, I would say that, you know, over the course of your academic career, right, you will be, I mean, as long as you're willing to be open-minded, and as I believe all historians and all people who are studying history should be, you have to be open to, well, one, there's no such thing as outside of ideology, right? And this belief that you can switch ideology in a heartbeat is not the case, right? And that's something we know from reading, like, I mean, even something like Althusser, right, which is very short on ideology, right? But like even Aristotle goes into this, right? Like in his, I mean, even as simple as in his categories, right? But I think the best strategy in the context of bettering the life of people, right? But I think that so what I'm trying to, I guess, understand, and what I'm trying to respond to is the fact that, like, how do you know, or how do you make, I mean, again, this is a discussion that's not really suited for this medium, right, I would say. But for one thing, is for sure, is through your study of history, right? One of those things is that, again, the idea of bettering things for, collective happiness, as you just said, right, as a target, I guess would be my definition of progress, again, requires expansion, right? Which I think is, and I think, your, your political worldview, if you're a historian, is one that is shaped by your readings of history, right? So I would say, like, I understand where you're positioning yourself, but I wouldn't say that I would say that, again, through your historical education, right, through the study of history, through your academic career, there are other aspects that you will come to know, as well as other things, not just history, but I'm sure you have to take other the core classes and also electives, right? So that's where you would try to take courses that what area of history is your at least preliminarily speaking, right? Because since you're a first year student, what is your area of interest? I'm from the Netherlands, so it is a bit different. I mean, I used to date a PhD student from the Netherlands, so I'm pretty used to the Dutch schooling system. Also, alles goed, alles goed. But again, like I said, through your historical education, you will gain greater insight. I hesitate when very young people right away take on a political position, especially when they don't have. I'm not saying they have to have a university education, but like they don't have much experience in the world, so to speak, right? I have no idea. I shifted towards modern contemporary, but I'm most knowledgeable about ancient history, medieval history. Okay, no, I mean, again, like when you're an undergrad, that's totally fine, right? It's only once you go to masters and the PhD that you have to narrow, right? Like, and by the PhD, you have to be super, super narrow. But yeah, I know a lot of medievalists, but I also know a lot of classicists, etc., right, that work in ancient history, or some. Recently, I've been speaking with a colleague of mine that works in prehistory, which is fascinating, but also seems to me to be so difficult because there's no writing, there's no, like, it's pre-civilization, so more than 6,000 years ago, and so much of it is conjecture, but not I don't mean that in a negative sense, but it's like you have to understand that, like, the field will change very quickly. Right. It has shifted a lot, but at the moment I have the technocrat bottom-up democracy idea. Yeah, like I said, I mean, like, there's a book called, like, The Education of Henry Adams, for example. And there are a lot of books that are like this, right? Often they're called well, there's one kind that's sort of called, like, the Künstlerroman, right? But there's also the Bildungsroman, right? But I guess I will need to look at Mexico since it utterly failed there, from my understanding. So I would take issue with that, if only because that shows me that you do not have an understanding of imperialism. Because what that utterly failed means, again, is defined by what? Like, defined by what? I don't think that that assertion can be made without again, preliminary knowledge. But again, I'm not saying your assertion is whatever. But I would say that if you want to. Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Miss Anita Bump, for the raid with 6 viewers. Thank you so much. Imperialize these nuts in your mouth. Hi, Anita. It's so good to see you. How are you? I hope everything's going well. It's always a delight to see Anita. Hello, Raiders. So that would be my response, is that, I would say there's a need to understand imperialism, and yeah, that's pretty much what I would say, is for the basics. Again, you're a first year history student, so I'm not going to... Oh my gosh, thank you so much, the Tanny Boy, for following. So yeah, I'm Shakespeare. I'm a cultural historian. I'm from Southern California. I like long walks on the beach. No, I'm just kidding. No, but I research Jewish history and also Latin American history. And yeah, that's usually what I'm talking about. But anyway, so I look forward to hearing more of your studies, the Kivet. I ran out of steam. I'm gonna make some chorizo y huevos con pico de gallo y frijoles refritos y queso fresco. ¿Por qué me estás dando hambre? Dios mío, no puedo creer. Ahora quiero hacer como tacos campechanos, you know? Like now you made me so hungry. But now I want to make tacos campechanos. So now I gotta get chorizo and carne asada. Pico. Oh, Anita, I forgot to tell you. I guess because I was streaming, I didn't have a chance. I went to this restaurant, and it billed itself as like an authentic Mexican restaurant, and they legit had, they had pico de gallo, right? Like that's how and they put like a whole bunch of mango in it, and also in their guacamole, mango, and I was like, I've been all over Mexico. Okay, AD. Yes. Miss Anita Bump, AD. As opposed to, yeah, visible by Verizon, $30 a month. Oh my gosh. One person, one line, great rate. Oh my gosh. Oh, is it? Oh, that's funny. It's funny that it's a deodorant commercial, considering what we talked about earlier, about that guy that was like, the way to get girls is to show her your armpit. And I'm just like, what? Okay, see you later, Anita. Thank you again so much for the raid. I really appreciate it. I actually am really, really hungry. And so I will have us go raid as well, because I'm too hungry. I'm sorry, Anita, you made me way too hungry. I made a whole book list, but I will respond for a quick second. Don't leave, everyone, please. I want to make sure that we have a nice full raid. I looked at all of them, since I feel my university is not giving us stuff to do. I felt the exact same way. I actually ended up reading much, much more than I was ever. Which is why, I went straight from a bachelor's to a PhD. I didn't have to do I got a master's along the way, right? I was able to do a master's on the side, but I didn't have to do bachelor's, master's, PhD. I went straight to PhD. Also going to read more in depth about the countries. Okay, fine. You know what? I'll stay on stream. I'm not gonna go yet. Also going to read more in depth about countries that I personally find interesting and important in the world right now. Yeah, sure. That's cool. I need to keep up my grade to get into a research master. Ah, yes. Yes, of course. Yeah, you want to be in a Okay, I went to this restaurant, right? And it was going towards, like, it wasn't in downtown LA, but it was going that direction, generally speaking, from on the 10, right? Generally speaking. And they're like, "Oh, authentic Mexican food," right? Cuz I'm like my friend is like, "Oh, I had to go to the library, right? Authentic, yeah, and they did the whole like, oh, we're gonna make it look like old Mexico, like they had like essentially like china cabinets, right, where they had like the old plates and stuff, and I was already like, I don't know, like there are some places, right, that do that are authentic places, right, that are like legit. Yes, the big wooden curios and everything, and like the big the big ollas bronceadas para hacer los carnitas and all that stuff, right? So like I go in there, because my friend was told that it was good, so I go in there. I'm hungry, and I kid you not, like they right there they had a sign that said pico de gallo, and then over here guacamole, because I got a taco de birria, a taco de carne asada, and then I got a quesadilla de pollo asado, right? So I'm like, okay, I need to get some salsas and blah blah, stuff to put on them, right? And at first I wasn't really paying attention, right? Because I'm thinking, oh, it's just pico de gallo, right? Because they have like a little salsa bar. And then I'll like take a bite out of out of my taco de birria, and there's like a big old piece of mango in it. From both the guacamole and the pico de gallo. Right? Because I had put like salsa también. Like I put salsa on all of them, right? Yes, they put it in the guacamole too. I'm like, why is there mango in the guacamole? Yeah, I know. I was like, what on earth have I discovered? Like, what is this, like the portal to the 9th level of hell? Like, or like, is this like, you know what I mean? Like, what is this place? Like, I swear, like, I know exactly, right? Like after this, I spoke to Leia. I said, "Do you have any guac that doesn't have mango in it? Do you have any stuff that doesn't have mango in it?" And she said, "Oh no, that's what we do, right?" And I'm just like, I told her I didn't like it, right? And she's like, "Okay, well then, we will, whatever, like comp your food or whatever." Because I literally was like, I'm not gonna eat this. Like. I like mangoes. Trust me, I love mangoes. But you do not put them in guac. Yeah, that's what we do. That's legit what she told me. That's what we do. That's what we do. I'm like, well then y'all need to do something else then. If y'all want to be authentic. Okay? Stop. Like, I swear, I swear, like, I was upset. I was legit upset of that. I was so upset. Do you know any good books about Mexico? At the moment, I'm collecting books. I was pissed. I was fucking mad. I was like legit like angry. I'm like, que chingadera es esto? Like I was like legit going like I was even like texting my friend like, what kind of fucking place did you tell me about? I was like not happy. I was not happy. Okay. You know any good books about Mexico? At the moment, I'm collecting books from a concise history series of Cambridge to get my knowledge up. My whole university straight up ignores the Americas except when the Europeans deal with them. I would recommend this book right here. No, es verdad. Como es todo lo que estaban haciendo y yo nomás estaba como, like, what? Like, what are you? Just give me a second. I need to. Oh wait, never mind. I was like so mad. I was like, de veras? So I would recommend this book right here, The Mexico Reader, History, Cultural Politics, edited by Gilbert M. Joseph and Timothy J. Henderson. This is their latest edition from Duke University Press. This is what I recommend. Right, it's a collection of essays that talk about everything from Like some of them are primary texts, and then it goes everything from searching for lo mexicano, ancient civilizations, conquest and colonies, the trials of the young republic. Right, it goes into all of this stuff, from the perfect dictatorship to the imperfect democracy. Blah blah blah. That's what I would recommend. So we're going to ignore the fact that there was just a muscle-bound hairy man on the screen. What? Oh no, oh yeah, like, oh, it's because we were watching his video, that's why.
For this specific amount of time, and then it's gotta cool, and then I can eat it. Get in touch with nature. See,
This dude legit, like, picks out, like, raw. He eats raw sweet potatoes. He just takes them out of the ground and eats them shirtless in the forest. Oh my gosh. But look, like, this is how he usually is. Like, no, thank you. Yes, I do have a Discord. It's right here. So, anyway, yeah. Are we just gonna ignore that there's a must? Oh gosh. Do you wanna continue watching, Anita? Do you wanna see him in another little video? She needs a drink. Oh my gosh.
what makes life worth living? What does it mean to be a man? Why even bother?
Why is he just
I
setting
understand
shit
how
on
frustrating
fire?
It can be as a young man to see the current state of our society. It can be demotivating. However, I want you to look at it from a different.
But wait, but why was he setting shit on fire though? Like, what does that have to do with anything? I still don't. Okay, anyway.
Perspective.
Maybe I'm just too Southern California. Like, why would you set? I know it. Okay, it's a controlled burn. Fine, whatever. But still, it didn't seem like it.
We live in a time of temptation. There are so
Definitely for Anita, there's some temptation. That's for sure. He said something about being a man, gotta burn stuff. Pretty much.
many things around us that entice us into the idea of, oh, just pursue comfort and kick back and lay on the couch and eat some Cheetos and
Cheetos? Okay, so I guess we know what his, like, chip taste is like.
you don't need to go to the gym. You don't need to cook your own food. You don't need to do
What? This dude is the one that said that he doesn't want to cook his own food. Like, that's why he eats raw shit. That's why he eats raw sweet potato. Now he's, like, making fun of people that don't want to cook their food? Let's lay back on the couch.
all this.
Cochina.
We live in a time of temptation.
I'm gonna eat. I do remember, though, there was a travel show where there was a dude that, like, was doing stuff like that, and I'm just like, no. Raw pork. Like
ultimately, this lifestyle full of...
Oh, yeah, I don't like Cheetos either. Also, if you'd like to help me with my research, you can always go... You can always go to my throne. There are books that I need for my research. You can always help me there. Or obviously become a subscriber. That also helps me as well. Anyway. Raw meat is a diet fad. People started getting black. Well, one thing is, like, I mentioned this earlier, but that's, like, the reason why we now have, like, Homo sapiens sapiens now, like, have an overbite, right? A slight overbite, is because we stopped eating raw meat. Whereas if we kept eating raw meat, like, yeah, they would be like other animals where they're exactly equal, right? But instead, that allowed for these teeth to grow longer, hence why they are that way.
Comfort and the pursuit of comfort is going to cost you the quality.
Okay. So this is the problem. He's saying avoid comfort and do everything the hard way, right? Then why is he driving around in one of these things? Like, why isn't he walking with the things, right? Like, back in the day, they would have been walking, or they would have had, like, like an ox or something, pulling that. You know what I mean? Like, it's always nice when they're like, you know, reading from like Ted Kaczynski's manifesto. But when they're doing it, you know, on their, you know, DSLR camera, right, and uploading, you know, YouTube shorts every single 10 minutes, like, what does that mean?
Quality of life that you would experience if you were willing to encounter uncomfortable situations. And as a man, there's nothing less attractive than pursuing comfort, pursuing short.
What? What does that even mean? What does that even mean? There's nothing less attractive than pursuing comfort. What does that even mean? Like, yes, I want to go get lost in cave systems just because I don't want to be comfortable. What? You know, like, it's one thing if you want to, like, rappel down and you know, do cool shit, but, like, it's not just like, oh, hey, I'm gonna just, like, walk straight out into the ocean, just, you know, because I hate the comfort of, you know, visiting the beach and just enjoying myself, you know, like, no. Was meat less parasitey back then? No, it wasn't that. I mean, like, humanity still has, if it ain't working, you ain't living. Yeah, pretty much. It ain't much, but it's good, you know. It ain't much, but it's good work, yeah. It wasn't that it was less parasitey, so to speak, right? It had all of that, but it's that the relationship when the ancients used heron, his steam engine, to industrialize colorize. I love that. Right? It's like I like how us like 20 seconds ago he was legit LARPing as Plato, right? Like wearing literally a fake outfit of that, of people that as they lived in ancient, technically Rome, but you know, Greece. Back then it was this, anyway, I'm not gonna get into that, but it's that the parasites, like because humans had developed, you know, over time eating raw meat, the parasites were as it were, oh gosh, what's the word right now? Well, essentially, like they would they wouldn't kill human beings, right? They would just live in human beings' bodies, right? Can't remember what it's called right now, but it's like it's a certain parasitical relationship, like with I can't remember right now. I mean, kind of like tapeworms, I guess, is one way of thinking of it, but not exactly. I can imagine Romans writing these things on their vile, yelling "salve," yeah, or "salve," to each other while they drive by. "Salve, frater, musas causas mihi memora," right? Just like. I remember reading Norse had sort of a stomach worms that allowed them to eat more stuff. There's a lot of stuff that's like essentially derived from like racist science, essentially. I mean, shouldn't mass farming? Yes, FLF and FA. Yes, that is true. That is true. But that's why they inject so many all the animals with lots and lots of antibiotics, right? With lots and lots of antibiotics. Yeah, that too. Wasn't that kind of what you were saying, though? No, what I'm saying is that, yes, what you are saying is that because the symbiotic, I guess, if you want to call it like that, relationship between certain parasites and humans was just like, it's not symbiotic. I can't remember what it's called. It's like a very specific type of parasitic relationship, but it's like the parasite. It doesn't kill the host, right? Because it's meant for the, if that makes sense, meant for the host, right? Whereas like when viruses and other things are like, you're not the target species, so to speak, right? That's why you see death in those animals, right? And because they are not what the virus or whatever needs to keep alive, right? Instead, they will stay in the infected animal, right? Because they've kind of have this parasitic relationship, right? And so that's how it developed, right? Yeah. But the thing about with Scandinavia is that they try to argue that something made it so that that it's special, so that way they can drink milk. Right. it's also giving me MGSV vibes. I don't know. That's not ringing a bell right now.
Term pleasure. Because women want a man that will face life's struggles and uncertainty head on. Understanding that as a man, you compete for resources, whether those be money.
No, what? Comensalismo, yeah. This is literally like social Darwinism right here. You can't, no, this is the problem, is that these people are like so pro-capitalist, but yet, like, like they believe in this, rough and tough, but then it's like all of the major capitalist people, right? All of the major, they literally could not exist without government money subsidizing almost everything that they do. Like, we know this with Tesla, but we also know this with, it's the parasitic, right, without damaging the host, yes. Neoliberalism is based on social Darwinism. Yeah, exactly. It is.
Or status, or your selection in your partner. It becomes a lot.
No. Oh, God. Please, let's not talk about sexual selection right now. I hate when they bring up the sexual marketplace. Like, no, it's not a marketplace, bro. Like, please.
A lot more appealing to...
Like, you don't have to be, like, what's his name? Andrew Tate, okay? Just don't.
Approach adversity when you understand that most men now...
Also, like, again, he has all of this, like, again, he could be reading, literally, the manifesto of Ted Kaczynski whilst driving around in this thing. And somehow they would view that as, like, consistent, right?
Nowadays are soft. Most men lack discipline. Most men lack skills. Most men lack value. And it makes it that much easier for you to set yourself.
I never understood it seemed l'art pour l'art, but then evil, market because of the market. I mean, he has a gun in case he needs to fight a bear. Ah, yes, the most ancient of ways of, defending oneself against a bear. If the, Glock 2730, 9mm. No, I'm just joking. The Glock 2730 isn't a 9mm. I think it's a 12mm round. Anyway, point being that, of course, the ancient ways, the ways of Plato, who walked around with his Ius Arus 15. Very much so, indeed.
Apart from the average man.
I think it's a Greek lark thing, like how some people hold Diogenes as a maximum idol, and you look at them and they're like, exactly. And it's interesting you bring up STEM, because that goes to the whole neoliberal stuff that the Kievet keeps bringing up, right? Like, yeah, the whole thing is LARPing, right? But the problem is that there are people that believe it, right? Like, LARPing can be fun, but the difference is that some people know when the LARP ends, right? Like, that's the difference, right? Like, an adult knows when the LARPing ends. I guess this is gonna be after Tetra. What's the next? Not Terra Chad. So I guess because we have Giga Chad and we have Mega Chad. So what would be the next level up after that? Anyway, what does it matter? But the point being that that the whole STEM thing, like, that's another thing too, is like in the United States now pretty much all public universities are run through a neoliberal model, which is why the social sciences, like history departments, for example, the humanities, like, the funding dries up instantly, or worse, they're told you have to produce your own revenue. But the business school in particular gets all of these grants, all of this money, the newest buildings, the latest technology, right? And somehow it's supposed to be seen as equal competition, right?
And this is incredibly motivating, because now,
I think my education has gone to death. And I mean, it's definitely, I would say, from what I mean, when I lived in Europe, I lived in Italy and in Portugal. Um, like, even though, right, there was a lot of that, you know, like cutting down of everything, still, like, there's more possibility. Exochat, okay, Exochat, there we go. Exochat. Is that then, you know what, like, if you know what we need to do? We need to make a moving emote, right, where he's just taking a big chunk out of the sweet potato. That's what we need. That, like, I would love to have that as an emote.
Mike's rigged in your.
Also, he has a chainsaw. Ah, yes, the ancient art of chainsaw. University shaped by the market, a lot more specialists are demanded and they need more money, so lower the education standard. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's that. But definitely, like I said, Europe is not as, I mean, definitely, like, you know, the Netherlands is, you know, the way how, you know, obviously it's not as bad as Britain. Like, Britain is, particularly England, is very neoliberalized. But America is by far the worst, like, of all of them. You know, because even the old traditional, like, even in Latin America, like in Latin America, in many countries, if you become a professor, you get tenured immediately, right? Like, that's not something in America. Instead, they want as much competition as possible. So they give you 6 years to produce this amount of stuff, and then a committee gets to choose, and if they don't like you, they just don't, they deny you tenure. If you don't get tenure, you get fired, you know? Yes, I was going to say, the Netherlands is as closest to the Anglo-Saxon model, or the, you know, the Anglo model, as say compared to, like, Germany, especially if you go to places like Bavaria, right? That have a little bit more. In terms of healthcare, I might rather be in England. I mean, literally just anywhere but the United States. Like, literally anywhere. Like, I mean, like, I know people that, like, who apparently now might be censored by the U.S. government because they're Cuban, right? They're Cuban Americans, and they're not gusanos. I'm thankful for that. But, like, because they went to go visit Cuba, like, now Biden said, oh, he's gonna, like, do something to stop that, or do something, you know, I forget what exactly the article said, but something like, oh, like, if you visited too much, or, I'm like, that's where their family is. Like, of course they're gonna visit Cuba, right? And it's like, when they were there, like, their mother was able to get, like, a major surgery done and it didn't, you know, they didn't have to pay anything. In America, it would have been over $100,000 because it was, like, internal medicine, right? So it's, anyway.
Favor. So go out there and do the hard work. Don't be afraid of uncomfortable.
Wait, okay. I need to have dental work. Someone suggested traveling for it. Like, I know a lot of people go to Mexico. Well, I mean, I guess I say that as someone that lives in Southern California. Of course they go to Mexico, right? Yes. Like, I know people that go, like, if they have a friend that's, like, oh, Armenian, right? And that they're going to go visit family, they'll, like, tag along, right? And go get healthcare somewhere else, right? That's a very common thing I've noticed. It's kind of sad that I am left in my country. It's kind of sad when I am left in my country when I opt for a Keynesian model taxing the rich more. Right, because, I mean, technically speaking, Keynesianism isn't left, right? Like, in the actual sense of what a leftist is, right? Like, in order to be a leftist, you know, that is to say a socialist, a Marxist, right? It requires not wanting the continuation of capitalism. But the social democracy view, well, see, like, that's why I find that your technocratic aspect of your, you know, like, there are many books that I could recommend, and now that you're going to be on Discord, I could, you know, recommend them there, because I have many channels there that, you know, I could be more than glad to recommend that perhaps might, you know, make more sense of what stuff you're thinking about. And this goes for all viewers at all times. Like, if you guys ever need recommendations or anything, like, just let me know, okay? Because, I mean, like, the Keynesian model does, Have you ever read, I'm not saying I'm like supporting it, but have you ever read The Deficit Myth by Stephanie Kelton? Because I know that a lot, because she cites a lot of neo-Keynesians, so that might be worth your while reading if you want to. Never heard of it? Yeah, it's just called The Deficit Myth. That's what it's called. But Stephanie Kelton is known for promoting like MMT, right? But the argument of the book does not involve, or rather, it's I don't want to make apology for MMT, right? Like that's not my point. Rather, I think it might interest you because she's looking at people who are more currently publishing, in economics, and because I also work with economic history, so that would be worthwhile. At the moment, I'm trying to get more economic theory by studying macro. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I mean that's pretty much, yeah. So this would be a good entry level because it's like a pop of dry theory. Well, no. What I'm saying is that it's a good book to read if you don't have necessarily, because it's a very good, like, how would I say it? It's a good descriptor book, right? Like it sort of gives you the terminology or points the directions at where in dry, as you call it, dry theory, right, you want to read into. Because when it comes to economic history, I definitely can recommend you multi-volume books. Like literally, it's one book, but it's like 7 volumes or whatever, like that's like the definitive stuff that, economic theorists, because when I was doing my master's, that's what I focused on, was economic theory and economic history. So again, that's why I would say like a book like that it's something you could read in an afternoon, right? It's a very quick book, right? I'm not asking you to read Ray's book, right? Modern Monetary Theory, right? That's a whole different thing, because that's like supposed to be like a textbook. But you could read it, and that's more theory centric if you want, and that's W-R-A-Y, Ray. But again, I think Stephanie Kelton's book is easier to approach to then go into dry theory, I should call it. So anyway, Anyway, everyone, please get into the machine. We are going. Thank you so very much for all of your support and for all of your help. And I will see you all very soon. Say hi to Polly for me.